I Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation at Montclair. My name is Marcus Greyhawk. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I serve as the Director of Music Ministries. And this is Jack. Jack, you want to say hi? No, not to me, to them. Never mind. If you're watching this service live on Facebook or YouTube, we invite you to share your name and, if you wish, your location in the comments section, and let us and each other know that you are here. We begin today's service by singing Building a New Way, a song that calls us to envision and create a better world. The hymns today will be led by our member, Amy Brabson.
Building Whoever you are, wherever you come from, whatever age, ability, history, identity, gender, or sexual orientation, you are welcome to bring your full self here. I'm Reverend Anya Samler Michael, she, her, hers.
And I am Reverend Scott Samler Michael, he, him, his. Grounded in faith, we come together to nurture the soul, inspire hope, and bring into being a more just and loving world.
A couple of weeks ago, we shared a time for all ages called There's Something on Your Face, teaching how we should gently consider the comments from members and friends when they tell us that we have missed the mark, that we have not been our best.
Today's service, Walking the Talk by Dismantling the Mess, is a deeper exploration of that discipline, investigating the history of our faith, something which, like our nation, grew up drenched in the myths and customs of white supremacy. Specifically, we will examine why it is important to actively dismantle racism and all intersecting oppressions as a duty of being a good Unitarian Universalist, how adding an eighth principle proclaiming that is one tool to speed us down a path to finally bringing about beloved community by becoming anti-racist as a people and an institution.
And if you find yourself today triggered by anything shared in today's service, please reach out to anyone on our ministry team. And if you have school-age children, please register for our innovative children's religious education program. And now, a moment from Lauren Carlton, from our Board of Trustees.
My name is Lauren Carlton, and I'm a member at large in your Board of Trustees. We are starting to plan for next year's budget. Soon the Finance Committee will propose a budget to the board based on lots of information, including how much money the pledge campaign brings in. Our financial stewardship tells a story of who our congregation is. We want to keep streaming services reaching people all across the country and as far away as Poland. We want to reach out into the community. We want to join together and fight for social justice. We want to educate ourselves about the things in life that make a difference. We want covenant groups, drop-in groups, connection cafe, beautiful music in services. We want to fund those things. This is our spiritual home. Do you know who our most important pledger is? You are. The board is hopeful that we can have a budget of our dreams. Please make or raise your pledge now.
Thank you, Lauren. Our congregation continues to move forward. Great to hear.
If you're joining us at 10 a.m., please continue with us for a Connection Cafe beginning at 11 a.m., which today is a town hall gathering regarding our care and connection ministry, our ministry that includes all of our small groups.
And now it is time to light our chalice, a beacon to guide us through these times together. Perhaps you have a chalice or candle at home, anything that you can illumine. Let us light our collective chalices as we share our chalice lighting affirmation.
Let us open our senses to take in the beauty. Let us open our minds to learn what is true. And let us open our hearts to love one another.
The eighth principle of Unitarian Universalism states, we, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote journeying toward spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. We begin today's exploration of the eighth principle with testimony from longtime member David Hanley. David is our chief hospitality engineer and a member of the eighth principle project team. In his sharing, David will refer to the term BIPOC, which means Black, Indigenous, and people of color.
I grew up in the segregated South in Atlanta, Georgia. I attended a Black Baptist church until my early teens. I left because I felt I no longer could accept the narrative that was given to me. While in college, in a religious discussion, a classmate suggested I attend a UU service. I attended the Unitarian Universalist congregation in Atlanta. Here, as I watched the people coming in, I was reminded of a quote that I had heard from Dr. Martin Luther King. 11 a.m. Sunday is our most segregated hour. But here I saw people from various races, ethnicities, and religious backgrounds all under one roof. The service was led by Reverend Eugene Pickett, who would later go on to be president of UUA. Coffee hour was wonderful, as was the conversations I had with several of the people who had attended. I left this service believing I had found my religious home, and thus began my lifelong association with Unitarian Universalism. Over the years, I've lived in Atlanta, Richmond, Virginia, Charlotte, North Carolina, and finally here in New Jersey. I've always found the UU ministers to be progressive, the members well educated and very creative, and they were always talented musicians. I've always found the congregations themselves were part of the vanguard of societal change, who stood up for those who were underserved, discriminated against, or in need of assistance. The diversity and inclusiveness of the masses have kept me engaged, and I have never felt overt racism at any place I have attended. I have found people who not only talk the talk, but walk the walk. However, I did find, as Paula Cole Jones of the Mid-Atlantic District mentioned when discussing the eighth principle, there are people who believe they are being good UUs without dealing with racism and oppression at a systemic level. There were times when I faced unconscious bias and or what I consider a tone-deaf approach to some issues and discussions. Despite good intentions, these words and actions were definitely a turnoff. Case in point. Do not proudly go up to a person you identify as BIPOC and tell them about attending an event where you were the only white person in the room. That person knows all too well what it's like being at an event like that, and whereas no one else who looks like them. Sometimes this is in their own congregation, in their committee, team, or even board meetings. Your comment does not impress them. And sometimes when they're at those events, they feel their concerns are not addressed or considered a priority. Keeping up with activism, the UUs have done this for years, and they have participated in marches for women's rights, Black Lives Matters, same-sex marriage, and supporting the LGBTQ communities. We step forward when other religious organizations don't. Now we need to look inward. Adopting, exploring, and following the eighth principle will help us do that, and we will be all the better for it.
Called now by this testimony into worship, we turn to seek a soft meditation, a deep reflection, an ardent prayer, each as we are called, yet mystically, all together. We enter into this space by hearing the lamentations, the requests, and the remembrances of our community. Let us hear one another to heal one another. We light this candle for Beth McGrain. Her mother died on February 9th, and her father is recovering from COVID. May this candle bring warmth to Beth in this time of loss. Wendy McNeil lights this candle for the Reverend Betty Bailey. Betty served as interim pastor at Union Congregational Church and was the first woman pastor at that church, and she worked to secure peace and dignity for the Palestinian people. She died on Wednesday, February 17th. this light shines for her. Nikki King lights this candle as a celebration of David Bornstein's birthday. Although we can't have a big celebration, we are blessed to have our health, family, community, and lots of love. Happy birthday. Stephen Mintz lights this candle and shares, Melissa and I had a granddaughter arrive yesterday, Wilhelmina Melissa Helen Mintz. Parents Ben and Jess were married at our congregation by Minister Emeritus Reverend Charlie Ortman. And as Stephen shares this great joy, he adds that it is sad only that Melissa is not here to share the joy. For the people of the state of Texas needlessly suffering dire hardship due to partisan foolishness and a criminal disregard for the public health and safety, may the suffering be minimized in the face of this predictable winter storm. And we light this final candle for the joys and sorrows that have not been spoken aloud. And in the silence that follows, you are encouraged to speak the names of those you are holding in your prayers or meditations, or to write them into the chat. May we hold this silence as this silence holds us. May our listening bring forth acts of love. Please join me in prayer. Spirit of life, as we move through our days, let us not lose sense of our holy connection. Our connections of birth and death, and all of the touchstones that we experience in between those wondrous and holy moments. For sometimes we forget that we're not actually disconnected when we're no longer in the presence of our loved ones. Let us remember and be comforted. And Spirit, as we go inward now to seek you, let us hear the clarion call of our faith. Let us sense it. Let us sense it to seek out and heal the thoughts and habits and emotions and hurts that keep us from living into the fullness of our beloved community. We so clearly want to be living into it. We want to be living into what we aspire. We just need to find a way. So Spirit, let us build this new way. Let us build it with the tools of grace and equity and action. Let us build a bold new way in which we learn from our mistakes and we repair the damage that we do along the way. Help us, Spirit, for we are ready. Amen. Ashe. Blessed be.
Oh, somebody's hurting my sibling, and it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. Somebody's hurting my sibling, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. Whoa, whoa, somebody's poisoning the water, and it's gone on far and it's gone on far too long, and we won't be silent anymore. Whoa, whoa, somebody's threatening my neighbor, and it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. Somebody's threatening my neighbor, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore.
I pray that we will continue to not be silent in the face of cruelty and destruction. When you give to our offering, 80% of your gift will care for the Unitarian Universalist congregation at Montclair, and 20% will support our justice recipient. Our February Sharing Our Riches recipient is Faith Action, New Jersey. Faith Action is a social advocacy network representing the Unitarian Universalist congregations of New Jersey, and has been supported and often led by our congregation's members. Working for 11 years with coalition partners, Faith Action New Jersey has been a moral voice in the public square, supporting environmental justice, immigration rights, reproductive freedom, criminal justice reform, and gun violence prevention, while recognizing that all issues must be viewed through an anti-racist, anti-oppressive lens. You can text to give, mail us a check, or go to our website and click on the donate button. This is a time of great need. All of your gifts are worthy, and they are all received with love. Today's reading is adapted from the 8th Principle Project website. Over the years, Paula Cole Jones, a Black leader at the All Souls Unitarian Universalist congregation in Washington, D.C., identified the existence of two different paradigms of our faith: the 7 Principles and beloved community. After working with congregations on these issues for over 15 years, she realized that a person can believe that they are a good UU and following the 7 Principles without actively confronting racism and other oppressions at the systemic level. She deduced this from the fact that most UU congregations are primarily European American in membership, culture, and leadership, even when located near diverse communities. Paula Cole Jones realized that an 8th principle was needed to correct this. Our principles were designed to be dynamic, never a fixed creed. UUA bylaws call for their review and revisions every 15 years. We want to always continue to educate ourselves, explore truth, and raise our consciousness. When we get to a new level of understanding and clarity, our faith challenges us to reflect that. Ours is the only religion that intentionally builds in that flexibility to acknowledge the importance of ongoing revealed truth. This happened when environmental awareness reached a critical mass and got added as a 7th principle. We have reached a critical awareness of the systemic nature of racism and other oppressions. Currently, none of the 7 principles mentions love. By including beloved community in the 8th principle, it brings our commitment to love higher into our consciousness, teaching us what love looks like in public. The 8th principle is really just the beginning of action rather than the ultimate goal. It should lead to support for programs designed to eradicate all vestiges of white supremacy and other oppressions from our institutions. The eighth principle would require action to dismantle racism and all intersecting oppressions as a duty of our shared faith. So, let us make our actions match our values. Let us build into our principles the constant challenge to live our principles in this world and not reward happy talk and empty gestures. That would be spiritual wholeness. Today's anthem comes from Leah Morris, whose music you have often heard during our opening and closing loops. The song is called Be the Light.
Day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
Hey, you guys, Leah here. So I must be among millions, if not billions of people who tuned in to the inauguration, and I was inspired by every moment of it, but especially rapt and lifted, exalted, just completely fixated and moved by Amanda Gorman's poem, her presence, her beauty, her artistry. And so this song was born.
There is always a light when we are ready to see it. There is always a light when we are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will. There is always a light in the dark when we are ready to see it. There is always a light in the dark when we are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night and to climb this hill, together we will. There is always a light. There is always dawn. We are ready to see it. There is always a light. There is always dawn. We are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will. There is always a light. There is always dawn. We are ready to see it. There is always a light. There is always dawn. We are ready to be it. To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will. Be the light, be the dark, be the light, be the light.
Be the light. Thank you, Leah Morris and the UUCM Chalice Choir. One way we can be the light is by summoning the courage to hear difficult truths about ourselves and our institutions. To be the light we need now, after a summer of mass protests, after police murdered George Floyd, after a year of Americans of color dying of COVID in much larger numbers than whites, after an armed white supremacist insurrection, to be the light means to take the lead in dismantling all systemic oppressions by revising our congregation's understanding of faithful living. The very start of this holy work is preparing ourselves to adopt the eighth principle of Unitarian Universalism. In 2017, the Unitarian Universalist Association engaged in a painful hiring practice that, at its core, was the result of unacknowledged white supremacist attitudes. This made us realize we needed to teach about white supremacy. We realized that dismantling all intersecting evils must be seen as a faith imperative. We have tried this work before several times, but every time we have faltered because we grew weary of the work, got confused about why it takes so long to accomplish, and we failed to ground the work deeply in theological urgency and institutional survival. The Commission on Institutional Change issued a report after that 2017 hiring fiasco called Widening the Circle of Concern. The report revealed that people of color in our institutions have suffered damage for decades. It found religious professionals of color continue to have difficulty acquiring and keeping positions, often being rejected over fake fights that are really thinly veiled white supremacist attitudes and customs that are baked into the culture of too many of our institutions. And congregants who are Black, Indigenous, or people of color have suffered a myriad of personal indignities. Here are just a few racialized insults, sometimes called microaggressions, shared in the Commission's report. Where are you from, really? Oh, you must be new to Unitarian Universalism. Could you empty that trash can? Welcome, do you want to join the racial justice team? Oh, I just have to touch your child's hair. You speak English so well. Imagine being a person of color and being spoke to like this in your congregation. I have witnessed it. Sadly, the horrors of our nation's sins invade even our sacred spaces as they invade every American space. Now, by all reports, our congregation was integrated at its founding. There were people of color present from our congregation's opening, making us unlike most congregations in the United States. Yet systemic racism lurks here too. We have our stuff. Many people of color in our congregation have reported all types of hurtful behavior and practices, some from the 70s, some from the 90s, and some from recent times. Everything from cultural insensitivity and appropriation to clueless comments to being frozen out of leadership due to informal power structures that have no accountability. Though we strive hard to prevent these failings today, without a clear challenge to walk our talk by dismantling the mess of white supremacy in this institution, we run the risk of once again stalling this holy work. Your leadership brokers no delay in this task. Beloveds, everything in our culture emerged in a milieu that includes America's original sin, white supremacy. We're like fish in water. The myths and customs of white supremacy so engulf everything in our culture that the depth and breadth of its evil are too easily overlooked and often dismissed or even belittled. But now our congregation embraces a year-long journey to learn, adopt, and live into the 8th principle of Unitarian Universalism, calling us into faithful action. So why an 8th principle? The 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism were adopted in the 1980s. At first, there were 6 principles. The 7th principle, respect for the interdependent web of being, was added during the final stages of passage and were enshrined in Article 2 of the UUA bylaws. But our bylaws also mandate the principles be reviewed every 15 years so they remain relevant as our faith evolves. But however, those principles have never been revised since their adoption 36 years ago. In that time, our faith has evolved. We have moved away from making idols out of thought and freedom. We've learned the intricacies of systemic oppressions and how they intersect. We have learned the cruelty of elevating the individual above all else, especially in a culture born of white supremacy, polluted by centuries of bigotry and the grave injustices of Jim Crow and mass incarceration. Our faith evolves. People today look to UUCM to give them more specific guidance of how to accountably live our faith in meaningful ways in the world. Young people especially resist calls for gradualism. They reject institutions that proclaim freedom but aren't willing to toil collectively in sacred risk to bring it into being. Young people grew up in the most multicultural America yet. They are adept at being in right relationship with people from the rainbow of humanity's expression. And they expect the same from their parents, their job sites, their schools, and their congregations. Yes, from us. The 8th principle leads us to this collective action as a people of faith, challenging us to dismantle systemic oppression as a requirement of a faith worthy of our sincere devotion. One of the objectives of our congregation's 2020 strategic plan, our 8th Principle project, has the full support of the UUCM Board of Trustees. Next, 2 members of our 8th Principle Task Force will share with you a slice of their journey. First, you'll hear from Shannon Gattens, and then from Nicole Gray.
Hi, my name is Shannon Gattens, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I've been involved in social justice activities since high school, although back then they just call it volunteering. I followed that calling with determination and grace. I got involved with actions around the environment, homelessness, abortion rights. However, despite going to a very diverse college, my white privilege kept me mostly blind to racial issues until later than I'd like to admit. Until I learned of the senseless death of Trayvon Martin, and then Eric Garner, and then Michael Brown, and then, well, the list continues and continues. I often wonder why it took these heinous acts to open my eyes, but it was then that I decided that I would educate myself about systemic racism and work as hard as I could to dismantle it. I have since attended trainings, facilitated group discussions, and attended rallies from here to DC. I am on a commission in West Orange that focuses on diversity and inclusion. I just finished a UUA course called Beloved Conversations, and I am an active participant in our Allies for Racial Equity group here at UU. Why am I telling you my whole history? To gain some credibility? Maybe. But the real purpose is a call to action. The action to become aware and then move forward with intention. I mean, you don't know what you don't know, right? But we know, and we cannot go back. The effort around promoting and adopting the 8th principle is the specific effort to become aware and go forward with intention. Without that specific principle addressing injustices by our BIPOC brothers and sisters, we are simply just talking the talk. And as David said, it's time to walk the walk. Do we know how we will live into this new principle? Sure, we have some ideas. But this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. The injuries were inflicted over a period of many generations, and cuts that deep do not heal quickly. A commitment to the 8th principle means that we're in it for the long haul, whatever that looks like, and however long it takes. So I ask you to join me as we, as the 8th principle says, accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions.
My name is Nicole Gray, and I am a member of the 8th Principle team. My parents were married at All Souls Unitarian Church in Washington, D.C. in the late 60s. All Souls was founded in 1821 by well-known luminaries like John Quincy Adams, along with laborers, immigrants, merchants, and Black people, both free and enslaved. In 1969, David Eaton became minister at All Souls, making him the first Black minister to serve at a large UU congregation. By the mid-1970s, the congregation was balanced between white families and families we now refer to as BIPOC. Eaton served until 1992. I find it curious that many people consider UU a white faith. I think it's because of how whiteness is centered in the U.S. My experiences at All Souls have not been centered in whiteness. They are centered in UU-ness and being there with my dad. My sense of feeling safe and loved was because of how easily we fit in: the music, the art, the laughter, the cadence of the conversation, and the coffee, of course. Plus, bonus, no talk about going to hell. Hallelujah! The demographics of UUCM and All Souls are different, but the 8 principles and the types of people who are attracted there are the same. True, I've encountered my share of microaggressions, those clueless comments that cut deeply. But it's clear to me that some people here have had very little interaction with Black people before UUCM. I can sense that intuitively. In those moments, I err on the side of love. As leaders, we are taught to embrace emotional control and be true to covenant. Under covenant, we are safe. True, there are certain white spaces at UU that don't feel safe to me, but my belief in redemption and building beloved community keeps me here. I'm excited that we have such a dedicated group of 8th Principle warriors involved in Black Lives UU, Allies for Racial Equity, Beloved Conversations, and the Adult RE program. My sense of community has grown during our virtual interlude. Reb Scott's Baldwin Du Bois class was packed with people who showed up and did the reading. I felt safe with them in breakout rooms. In fact, I found it incredibly healing to be in community in this setting with people who I know care. And trust me, you have to care. The classes were very long. Good, but long. The truth is that if one is not actively anti-racist, they are perpetuating racism. The great sin of white culture is not being openly racist. It's benign indifference. A perfect breeding ground for wily, shape-shifting, life-destroying white supremacy and the oppressions that come with it. As my 8th Principle teammate Shannon said, you don't know what you don't know until you know, but once you do, you can't turn back.
What we have learned in our 8th Principle project programs, Slavery by Another Name, Beloved Conversations, Widening the Circle, and more, we've learned that dismantling white supremacy and all systemic evil must become an orientation of being, a way of aligning our will with that of universal divine love, a way of judging everything we do through a transformational lens of liberation. When our consciences are provoked, what brings joy and awe is organized, focused action to dismantle historic evils that have been allowed to simmer and stalk the innocent for too long. This work is ours now, for as long as it takes, come what may. To be frank, I see no goodness in opposition to this initiative. Is it not unholy to delay implementing justice clearly identified as necessary? We become moral monsters when we tell others to wait for their freedom. So come, learn, discover your role, and create ways to champion collective, faithful action as a people of this congregation dedicated to righting the wrongs baked into our nation's founding. Let us walk the talk by dismantling the mess, because dismantling white supremacy is a priority of faithful people here and indeed of anyone claiming to honor the divine light that sparks us all into being. There is always light if we are ready to be it. Amen, and blessed be. Will you reflect with me? How can we embody the truth that a life of faith requires actively dismantling the intersecting oppressions plaguing our world? Now hush, hush. Somebody's calling our names. Sing with us our closing hymn, that African American spiritual. Hush.
Somebody's calling my name. Hush.
Someone is calling us. Let us answer the call to be active agents of liberation.
Let us not make idols of freedom and thought.
Let us instead embody our duty to dismantle the intersecting oppressions plaguing this world.
Let us find together the perspective to see the mess into which we were born, the courage to confront it, and the wisdom to fashion a faith dedicated to dismantling white supremacy and all systemic evils. Let us learn,
Adopt,
proclaim,
and live into the eighth principle of Unitarian Universalism.
Our worship has ended. Let our service begin. Go in peace. Go in joy. Go in love.
Join us right after this for a special Connection Cafe with a focus on our Connection ministry.
then join us tonight for a Soulful Sunday at 6 p.m.
Make sure to register for Sisters in the Wilderness, our 5-week course, beginning this Thursday at 7 p.m. And until we meet again,
Virtually or otherwise, you are in our hearts.